All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream of Shoot Your Shot. My name is Ben Jacobson. I'm going to be your host this evening. We have a very special guest with us tonight, my friend and fellow photographer, Kyle Ford. And tonight we are going to be talking about backup for photographers and storage and how to avoid losing out on those really important pieces of information and data for you. And we definitely want to make sure that we're covering kind of the basics of it, as well as giving you kind of a lay of the land and giving you some valuable takeaways that you can actually put into practice for your own backups and your own reiteration or your own redundancies of your photos. So we're super excited to have Kyle with us tonight. I'm going to actually get this closed. I got a feedback loop coming through. Give me just a second here.
It may have been me also.
Takeaways that you can actually put into practice. Oh no, where's my... All right, there we go. All right, we're back. Just had to mute that real quick. Can you still hear me, Kyle?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, cool. So we're super excited to have you on with us tonight, Kyle. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat. Anytime I can take the time to help people not lose data, I'm going to take that opportunity to try to spread the good word of backups. So, first of all, I'm Kyle Ford. I'm an adventure commercial photographer here in Utah. I work full time as the lead photographer for a smart home company here called Vivint. That's my day job, but still do a lot of commercial work on the side. Yeah, like I have a background in IT, so I'm pretty passionate about the whole backup situation, making sure you don't lose data. I always gripe at people. I'm like, if it's not in three places, it's not backed up. So one of them has to be off site, and we're seeing why. Like a lot of the stuff that's happening with flooding and pipes bursting and homes flooding. It's like, hey man, like that could have been all of your backups in one spot. So it's like we got to be really careful about that. So yeah, really excited to talk about the different types of media, different types of backing things up, and RAID, and trying to demystify RAID a little bit, because I feel like a lot of times maybe you're like, hey, I've heard that I should use RAID for some of my storage, and then you Google it and it's like, oh, this technical jargon mess, and you're just like, nope, I'm just gonna have 700 hard drives on my desk instead of jumping into something that's like makes your workflow a little easier.
Yeah, guilty of that for sure. And it's, yeah, I think you pointed out like a perfect example. Like, I mean, we are seeing like crazy, unprecedented like storms in Texas right now, and people are losing all sorts of really valuable things for, their family, their memories, businesses, all sorts of stuff. And having redundancies is part of that solution, but having offsite backup, to your point, is also extremely imperative. So, yeah, tell us a little bit more why RAID is not a backup.
Yeah, for sure. So, firstly, like backups are just basically copies, right, of your work or of your files of your media. But RAID, like, while it has like redundancy inside of itself, it's not a backup in itself, because most of the time it's just like, if I lose a drive, if one of the drives dies, then my data is still intact. It doesn't mean that there's a copy of it somewhere that if I accidentally delete something, or the file corrupts, or the house catches fire, that I'm not losing everything. So it is great to have like disk redundancy with RAID, because it will help you from like, it protects you from drive failure, doesn't protect you from losing data completely. So it should be part of your backup solution, but it shouldn't be your only part of the backup solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more. Is like what do you feel are kind of the misconceptions that are often attributed to RAID? Because I am absolutely guilty of being in the camp of like, yeah, I'm going to do RAID. I have like this custom PC that I built. I have all of these drive bays. Like I'm ready to go. Like I'm looking into getting like NAS storage. I started getting like super into it, and then I started actually looking into the technical of it, and I was like, okay, well, this is overwhelming. So like what
Yeah.
like is it really as daunting as it sounds?
It's not actually, like, especially now, like early on for sure. Like it was, you have to have a hardware controller and it has to have like, terrible interface for some reason. And it was just like, okay, plug these things in. And if it's not perfect, it's not going to work. And you're just like, I don't understand why this doesn't work. There was no like explainer stuff. So it's come a long way. Synology for one, like I prefer Synology for my home stuff. I built a couple servers at work actually that are QNAP. They're a little more uh, industrial friendly, and like it interfaces with our QNAP servers that IT uses seamlessly. So that's why I went with them on that. But they're both pretty dang easy to set up. Synology actually, like, dude, I swear to God, you slam those drives in there, you fire it up and like connect to the IP address, and it walks you through the setup wizard, and you're up and going in like an hour maybe.
Wow.
So like it's really come a long way.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not totally oblivious to how RAID works. Like my dad actually um, was like a network engineer for many, many years and worked on really high level
Yeah.
technical stuff. And so he had like his own like server racks and everything as well that he was hosting for a lot of his businesses. So, growing up, I was around that pretty frequently and I helped him build some of these servers and stuff. So I have some understanding of it, but I remember like specifically like going through, and I mean maybe it was just a different way of doing it. I mean we did it all through like a command line prompt in Linux or something. Like it was
Yeah.
probably a lot not as user friendly as what some of these like Synology interfaces are now.
Yep, exactly. Like it's hardly any command line unless you're writing custom code. So it really is. They have a nice user interface that you access through a web browser, and you can just follow the things. You download apps now for them, so you can like make a Plex server. Like that's a huge thing right now, is making a Plex server so you can access media throughout the house on your network or away from home, which is really cool.
Yeah. So tell us the differences between like RAID versus backup. I think that if people aren't necessarily like intimately familiar with the differences between the two, um, they can often see them as one and the same. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with, having your data in three places. And that's actually, it's funny you say that because that's literally what my dad always told me. And I'm guilty of not abiding by that rule always, but like that's literally what he would always say. If your data is not in three places, it doesn't exist basically. And the reason
Yeah.
for that is like you have to look at it as that imperative, like if you have your house burned down or something. So without me getting on too much of a tangent, tell us kind of how you would define the differences between a backup and RAID and why it's important to have those two distinguishing attributes.
Yeah. So like RAID can be your primary working drive, right? Like whatever RAID drive you have, whether it's like a 2 drive system that's like RAID 1, or it's like a 5 or 6, 10 drive system that's RAID 6 or something. Like that can be your primary working drive. Like we work off of a RAID box at the office, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being that it's like my primary working drive, that's not backup. It's just has drive redundancy. I know that if one of my drives in that box fails, I can go slam a new one in and it'll rebuild. I mean, it will take time, but it will rebuild all of the data because that stuff is stored, like that drive that failed is stored on another drive spread across those drives, right? But like if it can be part of your backup, like so for instance here I have like a 10 terabyte working disk on this computer that I work as my primary drive, and then it backs up to my RAID box because it's attached to network, and like I prefer to work off of something that's a little faster. So I'm just using my RAID system as one of my backups. So it can be part of your backup, but it's depending on how you use it.
Gotcha. So if you are, let's say that you are in the position of you don't have a solid backup plan at all right now. You are
Yep.
every Tom, Dick, and Jane that has like, hard drive upon hard drive upon hard drive just in stacks.
Yeah.
Like I think all of us have been there at some point, or we at least know somebody
Oh
that
yeah.
has. Like, what would you recommend would be like a good first steps for someone that is just getting into like understanding the importance of having really solid backups?
Yep. I think the unsexy answer is that you probably don't know what's on those drives anyways, which is like, that's your first step, is figuring out what's where and how to like back it up. And so it's like, I literally have like a catalog on a Google sheet that's like, cool, these are the projects or the years that each one of these drives hosts. So it's like, this named drive is 2012 to 2013. This drive, whatever, like that's how I used to operate it, right? And it's like, cool. So it's, I know what projects are on there. So you can like back them up like that. So if you have like all those drives, it's like trying to catalog what you've got and then figure out like how you're going to back stuff up. So like super old work, I wouldn't worry about like putting on a RAID or spending a bunch of money like making a RAID with a bunch of archival stuff. I would make duplicates of those drives, however, so that you, at least they're in two spots, right? Like if it's like an archive, you can like get pretty cheap archival drives that are slow, but you can literally like get them. You can like get a dock. They're just like this. Like this is a NAS drive, but you can get bare hard drives that are archival quality. Put them in a little dock and copy all your stuff to them and take them to another location, your mom's house or your grandma's house or your office or whatever. Just so it's like in two different spots. That way, at least you've got two copies, one offsite of like your archival stuff, and then your active working stuff, the stuff you need a lot of. It's got to be three. But like if I'm working on something, I would say like, yeah, get like a small like 2 drive or a 4 drive RAID system, and like whether it's your primary drive or one of your backup solutions, like cool, like try to plan it out. You have to plan it out. It's like, okay, I'm working here and then it's going to auto backup to here. And then I make a copy of this backup at some point to take offsite. Whether like, you don't have to like do physical drives. Like I operate like my backups, like with a rotating couple discs like this that I take to the office. I just every week, Monday morning, it'll have copied overnight on Sunday night. And then I just take it to the office, swap it out with the other one. I call them the Gemini twins, because 2 of them, they're the exact same. And that way there's always one offsite, because cloud backup doesn't really work for me because Comcast doesn't like, we have a data cap. So they yell at me when I push too much data. But there's a solution like cloud stuff like Backblaze and CrashPlan or Dropbox. Even like if you have like a big account with them, you can really back up to either of those things. And like that's offsite. So it can be slow and like take a while to catch up, but it's the 3 thing. It's like just planning out like a roadmap of, I'm working on this drive, backing up to this one, and then it's backing up offsite somewhere else, whether you're taking it there physically or it's pumping over the internet. Sorry for the long answer.
No, I think that's a perfect example, because you answered actually a question that I was already kind of formulating, which is, how often are you doing this? Like what kind of schedule are you needing to maintain in order to have like an actual secure, or at least just like the peace of mind knowing that like you have everything like really well taken care of.
Yeah.
So when you are doing your backups and you're just like plugging that in, how are you doing like your actual backup? Like, are you using software in order to do like a copy of your drive, or are you only copying over like certain files, or how are you actually doing those weekly backups?
Yeah. So like some people can do that manually. They can like, okay, I'm going to copy this like these folders over is what I was working on. I'm going to copy them over to my backup manually. I don't suggest that because it's really easy to just let it go and forget. And like, oh man, I haven't backed up in a month or a year. That's not great. Like if something happens, I'm screwed. So they make software. Let's see. I think for Mac, I think it's called Carbon Copy Cloner. It's a like automated like copy thing. I'm gonna look it up so I don't lie to people really quick. Yep. Carbon Copy Cloner is a great Mac solution for this. So basically you can just set things on a schedule. So if I was on a Mac system and not my PC here, that's what I would be using. And it's literally just like, okay, back up this drive or these folders at this time of day, every single day. And like, it's kind of like a set it and forget it thing. Like I would check it periodically, make sure it's still going. Like if it didn't disconnect or something, but just like setting a schedule so this backs up. Now, if you're doing a ton of work all the time, I would do this daily, like every night at least, or like you can do it periodically throughout the day. In case you're working on a big project, you want it to be backing up. And they offer something, I think they call it safety net. So it's actually like a true backup, because just mirroring drives isn't actually a backup, because if I delete something on this drive and it mirrors it over here immediately, that's not really backed up. It's just I have two copies, which is like partial backup, but it doesn't save you from boneheaded mistakes, which we all make. So it's like, oh, this thing, Carbon Copy Cloner actually says, okay, I'm going to put this in the safety net, which you can be like, oh, I want 10 gigs of safety net. So it's like I delete something, it'll hold it for however many gigabytes or terabytes until that space fills up, and then it kind of pushes it out the old. So at least you have kind of like a trash bin that's like, cool, I deleted this, and now I can go back and save it if I mistakenly deleted something.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's like a good solution, because I don't know how many times I've been like, oh yeah, I've already saved this, delete, 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 and a week later, even you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I got rid of that.
Ah,
Having that sort of backup on there is excellent. So this is something that you just basically leave a hard drive plugged in, and it's backing up to that external drive
yep,
periodically throughout the day from what's
exactly.
on your internal hard drive.
Yep. So for me, it's my RAID NAS system, but like it could be literally just another hard drive that's
Gotcha.
external plugged in. And it's just like, okay, this drive is my backup drive, and I want you to copy or mirror these, like this folder structure here every single hour. And it's like, if, and it's smart enough to know it's like, oh, these are in use right now. Like I'm not going to run, I'll just wait till the next cycle.
Yeah.
So you can like set a lot of parameters for it to run automatically. And like, you can get pretty technical with it. It's like, hey, I want it to run on like these days, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and like send me an email if it completes, or send me an email if it fails, type of thing. So it's pretty nice to know. It's like, hey, my backup's failing, I need to fix it. So
Yeah, that's probably a pretty important one to keep an eye out for. So you said it's carbon. What was it?
yeah, Carbon Copy Cloner,
Carbon copy.
CCC.
Gotcha. And what was the application you used for your PC?
I'm trying to remember, because I just cleaned off my PC and I don't have the software on here anymore. So I'm trying to remember. Like I know it's like a red logo. I'll try to figure that out really quick. And like I know there's one called Acronis that was pretty good. Let's see. Unfortunate that I just wiped my computer and now I'm missing stuff. Acronis is a pretty good one though. It's like a big backup company. And then there's one that's like literally just mirrors your drive.
Gotcha. So if you are, so that's going to be your first level of backup. So again, if we're looking at
Yep.
3 iterations of your data in order to make sure that it's safe. So you have your working copy. So that's, if we're putting this in just real world terms, so we'll say the working copy is just your MacBook Pro. You have a computer that you're working off of. That's your everyday. You have, a terabyte of hard drive space on there, and that's where you just kind of keep what you're working on. You don't have any external drives or anything plugged in currently. That's copy one, right? So then we're talking about
That's copy one.
Carbon Copy Pro or Carbon Copy
Cloner.
Cloner, that's what it was. So Carbon Copy Cloner for
yeah. No, it's a mouthful.
And so then you're looking at, you have like an external hard drive that's plugged into your computer pretty consistently, and it periodically will do automatic backups. So that's going to be pretty similar to like Time Machine, like for Mac users that have that whole thing back in the day. Do they still even make Time Machine? I haven't seen someone actually buy one of those.
Yeah, no, I think it, like every time I plug one in, it like literally starts to like go, hey, would you like to use this drive for Time Machine? I'm like, sure,
yeah, okay.
Or no, I'm just using this as storage or whatever.
So then you have your third copy, and we kind of touched on it a couple of times here. So what would you recommend for your third copy, your third iteration of data?
So if you're not pushing like tons of terabytes, I would honestly say like a cloud solution would be my suggestion, especially if you don't have like a data cap or like a really big data cap with your internet provider, because it automatically will just back up everything for you and just push it. Like if you have like, oh, I just downloaded a 60 gig wedding, it might take a while for it to get all of it, but at least it's like working in the background all the time of just like uploading that data. And like, so that's like another automatic backup process that's like cool. I know it's on, and like then it's way offsite. Like it's on their servers probably across the country, and you know that it's there if you need it. And like the way those work, it's literally like versioning. So it's like, hey, I changed this file, and then it knows you changed that file. And so it's like, oh, wait, here's another version of that. So you can literally go back versions of files, which is like you can do versioning with certain backups, but it gets really complicated and like takes up a ton of space. So like when it's online, it's a little easier because it's like, hey, I just want to download this one version of this file and bring it back down and replace it.
Yeah, I actually use like Backblaze for my backups for cloud backup, and it's awesome because I'm able to basically set like even parameters of when it backs up because I found it was actually causing all sorts of issues with um, like my data streaming. So like any sort of time I was like on a video call or anything, it was just so choppy, and it was come to find out it was because Backblaze was trying to do backups of gigs and gigs and gigs of data. So you can actually set parameters
Yeah.
on there. But the ability to go back in to Backblaze and just say this drive is, I accidentally deleted this file and I need to get it back. Like it has the similar kind of safety net in there as well. And being able to have that peace of
Yep.
mind of like, if I knock a drive over and break it, like it's backed up at least somewhere. And that like I
Yeah.
literally broke a hard drive like less than a year ago, and it fell down the stairs while it was spinning because just like how
Yeah.
it
That's like
fell.
your heart just like sinks in your chest and you're just like, oh no.
I was legitimately depressed for a few days. Like it sucked because it was like some really important like sentimental photos to me. It wasn't even like, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't important client work, but like it was the things that I lost were the things that weren't backed up yet just because they were like trips that we went on, and I was like, oh yeah, like just throw it on the hard drive real quick, and I didn't think anything of
Yeah.
it. And that's when you get complacent, that's when you make mistakes. So having like something
Yeah.
like Backblaze in place now, like it's only a couple bucks a month or something, and it's having that
It's
peace
worth
of
every
mind
penny.
is worth its weight in gold and then some.
Yeah. And I think to your point, like you said this, like while it was spinning. So I think that might be for some folks, if there's people tuning in that don't like know what that means, like I think that's a good segue into like the different types of drives, right? So like this is like what most desktop hard drives have inside them. It's just like literally like a SATA drive with it's got platters in here. There's like I don't know how many 5 to 10 platters that are just like literally spinning at 7,200 revolutions a minute with a little head that's just like reading them just like back and forth. There's heads in there. And any sort of like they have pretty good shock protection nowadays actually. Like if you like it'll like lock its head if it feels it's falling, but I mean, if it drops that far, it's going to break those platters, or it's going to the needle is going to hit that head and it's going to just be gone. And so it's like if you don't have that backed up, like you have to like you can send these in, and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars for someone in a clean room and a little white suit to take these screws out, take the platters off, reassemble it, and hopefully there's something left on them that's not totally destroyed to get any of your data back. And like whatever the backup solution is cheaper than having to do that. I guarantee it. And it's sickening when you have to do that.
Yeah, by mountains of money. I looked into it, and it's no exaggeration, literally thousands of dollars to have a hard drive. Like if it's gone, like if it's damaged, like and you need to like send it in, like
Yeah.
and good luck finding someone locally.
They offer no guarantees either.
Yeah, zero guarantee.
And like so like yeah, these things are like but like these are what I would say you would put in your RAID box though, because like that's gonna sit on a shelf, and like this is cheap media, right? Like these are very inexpensive. You can get 12 terabyte MyBooks now for like $200, I think. Yep. It's crazy. But that being said, like there's solid state options too, like which I only use solid state when I travel because of that reason. And like they're like this is a terabyte. Like, are you kidding me? Like it's insane, right? So like these are really coming down in price. And so like you got the solid state stuff, and then you have your cloud. And like I like to operate on like my backup solution as like a hybrid. So it's like some of everything, like a little bit of solid state. It's like, oh, my working drive is in my solid state drive. And then it's like it's being stored backed up here on this other media as like, these moving hard drives as like one backup, and then in the cloud is another. So mixing and matching is always kind of nice to, cost spread the, because you like if you were trying to make a RAID out of solid state drives, that's going to be a fortune. It's going to be really fast, but they're just not feasible to do that for a good amount of space.
So we have our three backups that we're talking about. So just to recap, we have our working copy, which is going to be whatever's just your day to day, wherever you're actually storing your files at. And then we're going to have a secondary drive or RAID array that's going to basically do like periodic backups throughout the day. And then you're going to have your third option, which is going to be some sort of off-site backup, whether that's cloud storage or you're physically taking it over to grandma's house to drop it off and swap it out every week, or to the office or whatnot. So let's jump back to RAID arrays and tell us a little bit more about what the different types of RAID are, because I think the first thing that people are going to notice is when you start searching for how to set up a RAID, there's RAID 0, there's RAID 1, there's RAID 5, there's RAID 6, there's RAID 10. Like there's so many different options out there that it can get very overwhelming very quick. And especially when you have to start factoring in, like if you have 2 8 terabyte drives, like you might only get 8 terabytes out of all of that storage, and it changes. And so you have to like do calculations to figure out how much space you're going to have and how many drives you need. And so walk us through maybe like, I know that there's like a handful of RAID options that are going to be more simple and better geared towards just like your everyday user. Can you tell us like what you would recommend to kind of get your feet wet in?
Yeah. And like, I think for the everyday user, if you're just doing like a 2 drive system, RAID 1 is your only option. That's going to like offer you some drive protection. So like if you're like, hey, cool, I'm going to buy 2 8 terabyte drives and get like a 2 drive bay. That's literally just going to like make sure like this drive fails, I still have it here. You're going to get half, because like RAID 1 is literally like, it's just a mirrored copy, right? It's just this one is copying over here to this one. It's just they're a mirrored copy, twins. So you get half of like whatever the amount of storage, 16 terabytes, you get half because one drive is mirrored to the other. It's the same data. You can't like take any more. And if you want to like play around with a calculator too, like just Google Synology RAID calculator, and they have like a really like cool interface where you can like plop drives in and see. Something to note also before we continue is when you're building a RAID array, they're like, which stands for redundant array of independent disks. If you were wondering, it's literally like a bunch of these. And like what you need to do is they need to be the same size disks. Otherwise you're going to have weird things where it's like it can only like go up to the maximum. It's like if I have a 4 and a 5, it can only use the maximum of the 4, right? Otherwise you would lose data if the 5 dies. So just make sure you use the same size disks, which is always advisable. But yeah, I'd say like for the beginner person, like a 2 disk system is super handy. You can make it, RAID 1, and it should be literally like plug and play. If you want to be a little more advanced and have some more storage, Synology and QNAP both make like 4, 5, and 6 base systems that are like, get up in price a little more. But so I would say RAID 5 is easiest because you get the most storage and it's less complicated. I mean, setting them up is kind of the same, but RAID 5, you only need 3 disks to make a RAID 5 array, where RAID 6, you need at least 4. And so the difference between those two, so RAID 1, remember, is they're just the same. 2 disks, they're the same. Or 4 disks, and these two are the same, right? With RAID 5, you have 3 disks. So we'll make it simple. There's 3 disks. Mm-hmm. So it's disk 1 is got a bunch of data on it, but like the data from drive 1 is also half of that's put on this drive, half of that's put on this drive. So if this disk dies, that data still exists on these 2 disks. It's like, okay, but it's like across 2 disks. So when you put another drive in to replace that, to rebuild the array, it goes, okay, these 2 disks, give me all the data from this disk that broke, and we'll rebuild it. And now you have the full array again. And so you have one drive failure tolerance with RAID 5. With RAID 6, it's a little more complicated. It's you have to have 4 drives, but it's literally the same thing, except it's you get 2 disk tolerance because this disk is across all of these, this disk is across all of these, and it's like, but you have it's double parity. So you have the same data is on more than just one other drive. So if 2 disks fail, you still like all of that data is left on the other 2,
But
which
that,
means you lose some data because you're storing it twice.
yeah, that's what I was going to say, is you're going to lose out on some of your storage capacity because you have the data, basically the data is copied in small little bits and segments across all of the drives in certain
Exactly.
capacities. So it's essentially like if one of those drives fails, the other 3 have enough information, enough bits that they can send all those instructions back to the new drive, and it can say, okay,
Yep.
cool, I have enough information to where I can rebuild this entire drive back to what just was what just crashed. Am I understanding that correct?
Right. So if those are like 1 terabyte disks, like just to like show the math, it's like a RAID 5, you get 3 terabytes of storage. So you're basically committing 1 drive for backup, for like disk backup. Um, Failure tolerance, I guess, is the term you would use. But with RAID 6, it's like RAID 1. So you're committing 2 disks worth of space, so 2 terabytes to bit parity, so you don't lose data. So because like if you lose a drive and you have to rebuild, it's going to take a bunch of taxing. You're going to tax those drives to rebuild that other drive. So you're increasing, like if that drive failed, the other ones are probably not far behind. If it's not like a manufacturing thing, they're just wearing out. So you're like, hey, taxing these other drives to rebuild this is kind of scary. So it's nice to have a 2 drive failure tolerance, because like if I lose one more, it's gone. The whole array's dead, and you lose all your data.
So if you are, if on that example that you just had, so if you're in a position where you have let's say only a 1 disk tolerance for failure, if that drive fails, how much time do you have to replace, like, I guess the example, or excuse me, if you have the RAID 6, so you have a 2 drive failure tolerance, if one of those fails, what
Yep.
kind of time frame do you have? Like, do you expect that you, like, this is something you need to immediately like pay attention to right now? Like, what kind of like urgency should be paid attention to when you have one drive
I
fail? Should
mean,
you just replace all of the drives at that point?
so you can't replace them all at that point. But like what I would do is,
Or excuse me, after, of course, after you rebuild that drive, and then like, would
yep,
you then just like go through and
I would
cycle all the
copy it
drives?
all off of the RAID. So yeah, I would copy it all off of the RAID onto another disk, or like split it up and back them up again, or like make sure you have backups. And then I would replace the other ones. And like a lot of stuff you can see, like drive health, and it's like, hey, these are actually still good. That one just had a mechanical failure. So like you can test the drive health with it's called smart data. Almost all drives come with it now. So it just kind of depends. If I know that these have like, 6 years of continuous runtime on them, and like I've been working them pretty hard, I might think about switching them out. And I also, it's a good opportunity to maybe upgrade your drives, because after 6 years, you could probably get bigger drives for cheaper, right? So it's like just like kind of using your best judgment. It's like, oh, these are brand new, and this one probably just had bad sectors on it or something, and just went kaput. Just replace it, rebuild the array, and you're probably good. I wouldn't let the array sit there and not have its secondary tolerance for very long. I would order a drive straight away. The RAID box is going to yell at you until you do, hopefully. And second, like then you're just kind of playing with fire. Like it's like, oh well, it's still okay, it's still operational, I can still get my client work done. But it's like, I might move the current project off that and move it to something else, so I can literally like get it worked on. It's like not taxing those drives more than they need to be until it's all back to being full array.
Gotcha. So is there, is what would you say is going to be kind of the determining factors of which RAID type to select? Is it going to be primarily like a budget thing? Is it primarily if you're looking at speed versus backup? What are kind of some of the things to take into consideration if I'm going to go out and start spending money on storage?
Yeah, I think budget is probably a major factor because it can get expensive pretty quickly. Like, if you're buying 8 drives, like that's going to cost you, a grand of drives pretty quickly, plus the cost of the enclosure. And so it's about like, hey, what do I need for my business? Like analyzing like how much storage you actually need. And it's like, okay, I can, put 3 years of work on this, and then the rest I archive onto other drives where I take them like one off site or whatever. Just kind of analyzing like your current needs and like what can fit in your budget. Like, I mean, if I had all the money in the world, I would have a actual server rack with a massive RAID system in it, running stuff. But like I don't, so I've got like a 5 drive, six drive system in here, just doing its thing. Because like that was kind of in the middle of the ground, right, middle of the road. So I think looking at it, and like RAID 5 is fine, although with the bigger the drives, like there's some like risk, like that, like I forget what it's called, but it's like a double fault where it's like trying to read it, and if it can't read it twice or something happens with like a double, you get 2 errors, then it literally just like the whole array just destroys itself. And like because of the drives are getting so big that it's kind of like getting scarier to run RAID 5. So I'm just suggesting to people, like, 'cause I build these out for people occasionally, as like they'll just like they'll pay me, and I'll just like order these things, ship it to my house. I'll build it, I'll set it up, I'll ship it to you, and then I do like a little course on Zoom, like here's how to set it up, here's how to use it.
Oh, cool.
I'm just setting everybody up on RAID 6 because it gets rid of that issue, because these drives are like 12 terabytes now, and like these double faults are becoming more prevalent. Like it's not super common, but it can happen, and I just don't want that to be a thing.
So is there RAID 6 will avoid having the double fault issue because, or is the double fault issue caused by having larger drives?
So I think it's caused by having larger drives, but the RAID 6 does withstand the double like fault thing. I don't know, the like it gets really nerdy really quick, and I don't understand exactly the fault tolerance thing there. And like it's something to do with like bit checking, and it's like checking, it's like, okay, this packet of data matches this one, and it's like if something happens with like their sectors are there's so much data on there that it gets lost or something. And it's just like, okay, with RAID 6, like it can go, okay, well, what about over here in this other one I know it's on? And it's like, oh yeah, cool, it's still good. And then it
Gotcha.
fixes it in
Okay.
the other spot.
I see. Okay. It's because of the multiple redundancies, and it's not just banking
Yep.
on one extra. Okay. Got it. Cool. So
Yep.
let's say that I'm in the market. I am trying to get something set up. I want to do RAID 6, similar to kind of what you're setting up,
Yep.
the people that you're helping out. What kind of budget range should I expect? And like you mentioned, drives you can get for, it depends now. It depends on the speed and which brand and which level and everything. But what would you say is kind of like a good ballpark for someone to kind of get started in this, so they kind of have at least a general round number in their head?
Yeah. So let's, because it changes so often. Let me just because that's a great question. I'm gonna say it's gonna be like upwards of like, for a small 5 drive system, you're gonna think you're like looking around $1,200 out, like all done. But let me just be sure.
Okay.
Have
Not
So this one is fully out. A 4 drive system is fully outfitted with 16 terabytes. It's 1,400. Like that's fully built. You don't have to order the drive separately. It's just like you got 4 discs, and it comes with all the discs installed already, I think, with the SSD, which like does some of like the higher frequency stuff already. So that's another part of this. Like you can not just use the drives, you can like have like another section that's got like a solid state drive in there too that handles all of your like frequently accessed files.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I think if like $1,200 is probably a good like idea about where you're gonna start to get into like RAID 6.
Okay. And so let's say
That's like
you're,
you're gonna be. Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you're looking, and like that comes with RAM and everything. So yeah, that's 4 2 terabyte discs in that. So that's like 8 terabytes is a pretty good chunk of data for most people. If you're shooting video, obviously, like that's gonna eat up a lot quicker. Like video eats up insane amounts of data. But if you're just shooting like portraits, weddings, and stuff, like you can probably work off of that for a long time, and then you can really just scale up from there, just like getting bigger discs and putting them in the RAID box.
So, and just for people that might not be familiar, can you describe kind of like what a RAID box is? I think maybe a lot of people have maybe seen them or kind of know what they are, but can you describe kind of what it is and what people should be looking for?
Yep. So, like Synology's for like, I'm just because I'm looking at it right here on the screen. It's called the Disk Station. Like the 4 bays, the DS918 Plus. So, basically, it's just a box. It's literally just like a plastic box with probably some lights on it, and then four slots with just like literally where you put these in, and it's got like an attachment that goes on the back of the drive that you can like slide it in, and it just plugs straight into there. So it's got like a motherboard in the back, and then it might have like a solid state drive spot, and then like 4 or 5 or however many you want, but like a bunch of disk slots in the front. So it's literally just a box of hard drives that all work together to store your data.
And a lot of the newer ones, I think Synology does it right. I'm not as quite as familiar with how they're doing it now, but they actually have like their own little like mini operating system inside of that where you can kind of like navigate through there, right? It's like it can
Yep.
somewhat like function independently.
Yeah, so depending on the option you get, like you can plug in like a screen to them. Like if you get like the bigger ones, like they should have like little buttons on them to operate depending on the size of the discs you get. But most of the time, it's you like the operating system is loaded on there already. You just have to plug an Ethernet cable in and then go through your browser to the IP address. And they're like if you download their software, it literally walks you through how to connect to the IP address, how to find it. It'll search your network and find it for you. So
Oh, nice.
like the bigger NAS boxes literally have like a monitor port where you can plug in a monitor and like you can see what's going on and like mouse and keyboard into the USB things. It's like literally like a little baby server. But the smaller consumer grade ones are going to be more like you have to plug it in via like USB somehow or plug it in like via Ethernet cable.
Cool. Okay. So, taking it one step back, I think for anyone that is new to RAID or new to kind of like the benefits of it, $1,200 is probably like a lot to swallow up front. So, what if we were looking at like a RAID 1 option? So if you're looking at a RAID 1, which is again just basically like you're having twins of your data, and that's being chronologically backed up through Chronos or the other backup software. What kind of range would we kind of be able to look at there? Because we're taking into account we have the RAID box, which again is just the enclosure, the case that kind of connects. Think of it as like the housing for your hard drives, and then we have, of course, whatever drives that you want to pick up. So, of course, the drives are going to vary a little bit in price, but what are you kind of seeing as far as like a basic RAID 1 setup?
Yeah, so I think if you went with like their 2 disc setup, which I think is a great starting point for people, it's about $600. I think with everything. The DS720 Plus is their newest one. They have the older version, which is the 220 Plus, but they're pretty similar. But like so that and 2 4 terabyte drives, which gives you 4 terabytes of space. So you're basically just like getting 4. Plus, I think you'd want to get the little SSD so you can access the stuff faster. You can go without it, but like they would recommend that you do that. So if you're accessing it, it's putting, oh, I know you're working on this Photoshop file. I'm going to store it on this SSD so you can work on it and it's not really laggy. And then I'll store it on these big hard drives behind me later, type of thing. And that out the door is like 609. So that's like about half the price is like a bigger setup, but it's a great way to get started. Which is super nice to be able to be like, okay, cool. Like I know I've got like all my wedding stuff I'm working on right now is like got disk failure tolerance. So I know if this drive dies, I still haven't lost anything. And then I'm backing it up over here, so it's also not being lost, but it's just a nice, not like your workflow's not interrupted, essentially.
Yeah.
Because we
And
all
it's,
know that time is the most precious resource.
yeah. And I think that's another part of it too, that is like I think everyone on their best day is like, yeah, I'm going to back everything up. I'm going to be super good about like making sure I catalog and write down and label everything, and I'm going to have everything super organized. But you know, even the best laid plans, like it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah. You're in the middle of busy season. It happens.
yeah, and so I think that that's usually what happens with most people, and the idea that using something like this raid box in conjunction with like a backblaze or something like that, like you can have this something, or you can have like all of your really important data backed up without having to completely like destroy your workflow and like have to be like, oh man, I forgot to do this, or I forgot. Having like that peace of mind that even if you don't take your hard drives to the office every single week, like there's still other really good solid solutions out there that are almost
Yeah.
completely automatic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I said, like if it's automatic, you're not gonna forget during busy season to keep your stuff backed up. And like the stuff that you haven't delivered yet, it's bad enough when you lose some of your portfolio, like that sucks. But if you lose client work that's not delivered, like you're on the hook for that. And if it's a wedding, like look, man, like at this point, like that's why I keep doing these like talks and like talking about it in YouTube videos and like making lives about it on my Instagram. It's like I don't feel bad for you if you lose client work anymore because it's cheap and it's easy. Like just do the thing. And I know that's not very nice, but like this is like that's part of your job description is like not losing your client work, right? So like these are like $100, man. Like get a two of them when you're traveling. Like that's the thing. It's like it's happened to a lot of my friends and it sucks. I'm like I feel bad like that their clients lost their like photos. I'm like okay, when you're shooting a wedding, let's like this is like a travel scenario, right? So I shot all these cards. It was a wedding. Cool. They're all ready to go. This doesn't leave my person like the rest of the trip. It's on me. You rob me. Cool. This is back at the hotel with all the photos backed up. And then it's like if I'm out of country, I actually will like have two of these and I'll mail one home in case something happens while I'm traveling. So it's like, but
Yeah.
usually it's like I've got my cards and I've got two of these separately. So it's like one's in my photo bag, one's on my person, and one's in my luggage. So they're three different places. So one of them is with me at all times. So it's like somebody steals my photo bag. That sucks. I got insurance. Like I'm okay. I lost one of my drives, but the cards were in my check luggage or something. You just got to have three all the time. Cause like people are like, oh, I was eating dinner and they stole my bag. And I'm like, you had both copies in your bag. Like, what are you doing? So,
Yeah.
like, don't do that. That's super scary,
Yeah.
especially for weddings. Like commercial work is one thing. Like, yeah, they're gonna be pissed. You have to reshoot it. But if it's like a wedding, that's literally you never get to go back. Like one time, that's it.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
like, oh man, like it gives me such bad anxiety.
I've been really, really fortunate, knock on wood, that I haven't lost like any major client work. Actually, I did lose one client work. It was like my very first real like official photographer job ever. I was 16 and I was recommended by my photography teacher to uh, shoot for the city of Meridian, which is like a suburb outside of Boise here. And so like I was like the staff photographer for the city, and like they had like a
Oh,
big parade or something, like some big event that I like photographed, and I had like a just a drive failure. Like I wasn't any fault of my own in that
yeah.
capacity. I didn't like throw it like I did this year, but like I it just was gone. And I mean, like I was barely getting into like a digital camera at this point, and so like I had zero backups, and I like had to go to him like with my tail between my legs and just like, yeah, I lost it, and they never called me back. But I don't blame
Yeah,
them. Like I screwed
it's
them up.
hard.
Like that's what they weren't paying me for. But like
Exactly.
That's a really good point. I think that most of us don't, at least I haven't, really considered like having triplicate redundancy while I'm traveling. Even like that's a really good point that I've never even once crossed my mind. Like, I mean, I keep the cards separate. I keep like backups from like because all of my cameras have like dual slots, so I always separate those, and I always try
Yep.
to back up before I ever leave location. So I do kind of have three backups. I have two. I want a copy on two different cards, and then one on my external hard drive. So I kind of have three, but like
Yeah.
taking it to the idea of like, yeah, what if you do get robbed? Like that happens all the time. Like, did
Yeah.
you see
People
that
target us.
video,
Like
by
that's
the
a lot of
way?
equipment, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, hey
Um,
man, like you can have my cameras, but can I have the cards, please? Like, I don't care. Like, I mean, it sucks. I'm gonna have to do an insurance claim and I'm gonna have to pay a deductible, but like at least can I have the data? Like that's all I
I've
care
thought
about.
about that before, man. Like when you hear about people getting camera gear robbed, it's like you do, like your heart breaks a little bit because you're like, damn. But at the same time, like the worst part is you're like, okay, they are never getting whatever's on that card back ever. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
you almost like just want to put out a plea, like, just I won't even tell the cops on you. Just give me back my cards
Dude,
because it
yeah, like
sucks.
mail it to this freaking PO box. Like, I don't care, please. Like, it's crazy, yeah. And like, so like, yeah, shooting on dual cards and immediately like putting them like in different cases in different places, like that's a great way to like protect against that before you can like get back to the hotel and you know back them up properly.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to
And
be
like
something
hotel
I
rooms
implement.
aren't safe either.
Yeah, no, not at
Yeah,
all. I've come
I
back
think
to
I think
my hotel
my
open
friend
many
John.
times.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, somebody went through my stuff, and oh, like that's missing. That sucks.
Yeah, it's the worst, and it happens all the time too.
Yeah.
I
So
think
like,
everyone.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And I think like just being as cautious as possible with your data. And like when you're traveling for yourself, it's like, yeah, it sucks if I lost something, but like client work for sure, I always triple backup stuff. And like flying, if I'm flying overseas, you know, if I'm whatever, it's like, yeah, it doesn't cost that much to, you know, mail UPS yourself something like a small, like little envelope. It's like, cool. I'm just going to mail that back just in case.
Yeah, throw it in a bubble mailer, and honestly, like even if that hard drive goes away and you never see it again, like if you're out $150, like man, build that into your client cost, like into your price, like make it so that you
Yep.
can buy one of those every single time you get a new client, because like it could really really save your back, like in the case of like you lose something, like you're not only losing it and letting that person down, but like you're on the hook for it, like contractually, and that could ruin your
Yeah.
business. That could literally put your business under, because you're taking something that is, in some cases people are spending a lot of money on these weddings, and if you are hired to do that, like you have a very very specific job, and yeah, it's just really important, and
Like,
it's worth
like you're
spending
not
money.
just out the like money you have to pay them back. You're probably like they may sue you and sue you for damages, which is going to be more. And you're
Yeah,
like I don't know if I've got that cash laying around, you know, shoot.
yeah, it's a lot cheaper to buy an extra hard drive.
Yep, for sure. And like that's the thing, it's like dude, like buying a raid box even is like yeah, sure it's $1,200 to get started, but it's going to be 2 grand to get one of these repaired. So just don't go there, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and even if you're just having like triplicate backups, just backing up three hard drives. I know that's not an elegant solution. I know it's not automatic, but just having it in three separate places is at least a good start. But I mean, for sure, look into something like a Backblaze or CrashPlan or any of these cloud-based like backup services. They're really like, I think they're like $4 or $5 a month. Like it's something that you shouldn't have to think twice about, and is like silly not to get. And it's really cool because they even like they'll back up any hard drives you have plugged in. So if you do eventually spend some coin and get set up with like a nice RAID system, like it'll back that up too. So you have redundancies on your redundancies, and you have it in distributed across servers across the world. It's not the fastest thing in the world, and I want to put really heavy emphasis on that because it might take you literally a month to get it set up for the first time. It might take a month for it to back everything up because it's really slow, but it's there, and it usually backs up in the background. I've set mine so that it goes from midnight to like 7 a.m. And then like when I'm in my studio in the office, like I don't have to worry about it because it'll back up that night, and I don't do anything that like I can't recover like day of. Like I'm not erasing stuff that fast. So a simple solution like that is like a really easy way to go to get started, but like definitely look into and consider like some of these other options for a RAID redundancy backup or a redundancy, because it really could save you a lot of headache and a lot of stress.
Yeah. And like, I think I just want to reiterate one more time is that RAID is not a backup, right? Like it'll keep you working and keep you from like, oh, I have to download this data. It's going to take 6 days to download this project from CrashPlan or something. But like, it will keep you working. And like, if you lose a drive, but like, it shouldn't be your backup solution or the only part of the backup solution. So like, yeah, like you said, like CrashPlan is so cheap. Like I've been suggesting Backblaze because it's a little easier to set up. But like, man, and like some of them actually have a thing called like Snowball or something where it's like you can like send them a drive and they will just upload it for you. So it's like a great starter. I don't know if they still do it or not. One or both of them were offering that at one point. And then actually, if you have a whole system failure, you can actually order a hard drive from them and they'll mail you a hard drive with all your data on it. So it's faster than trying to download it all.
Yeah,
which is
I
really
know
cool.
that they have that for sure. It's awesome. I looked into that. It does cost you a few bucks if you have to do that. I'm like, I can't remember. It's like $70 or $100 or something like that. And they'll send
you got to pay for the drive, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's for what you're getting. Like if you have that heart attack moment where you're like, holy shit, I just lost everything. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have it backed up. You'll pay any price. I've been there before, and I tell you, I would pay any price, like to have back like all of the things that that I've accidentally lost before. And knowing that like you can spend $100 and have that peace of mind is so important. And then also like having it like on site, like having the ability to know that you have like all of your data backed up real time, because like I mentioned, it takes a really long time. If you're working on big video projects every day or big photo projects every day, it might not be backed up for a day or two. So if you're doing high volume or you're doing a lot of data transfer, or you just don't have the data limits to be able to handle it, I mean, RAID arrays, being able to have additional backups that you can take off site, a lot of these are going to be like really super solid options. And it's scalable too. It sounds like you can really kind of get started as little or as much as you want.
Yeah. And like, even like if you get like a 6 drive box and you fill it up, you can buy an expansion box for it that's way cheaper than like the original one. Like it's got like all the OS on it. You can just plug it in and like buy the drives for it. And it'll literally just be like, oh, cool. Here's another like partition of like, it'll be like, on PC, it'd be like, G instead of F or something, Sure. But like, it's just another drive you can have, it'll like interface directly with it. So you can just expand them up to like 2 or 3 units, I think, which is super cool. I did think of something just off the top of my head about when you're backing stuff up, especially when you're traveling. So I've had the issue because of a card reader before. I've had corrupted files when I was downloading, and I was copying. So I would download them to a drive, and then I was copying what I downloaded to the other drive. Mm-hmm. But if there's any errors in what you've downloaded, you're going to duplicate the errors. So you want to download the cards twice, actually, is the most efficient way to do that. So it's like download the cards once and then download them again onto the other drive. So you have 2 separate downloads, because it may have corrupted the files on one download, but not on the other. And like, or like the card was being weird, or the card reader was being weird, or there was just an issue with the transfer. So downloading it twice reduces the likelihood of like the errors, and then you don't perpetuate the errors by copying what you've already downloaded. So that's just something that's like super in my head, that like I've made that mistake and I don't want anyone else to have to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's also something to be aware of with backups as well.
Yep.
Making sure that you're minding your data to ensure that you're not having like corrupted files that are being backed up, because that can also cause problems down the road. A little bit more in depth, but definitely a good point to kind of keep in mind. I think something that will be really helpful is I'm gonna link up with you after this, Kyle. I'm gonna actually grab a handful of links to see if we can put in the description down below, so that if you guys have any questions about like the equipment that we talked about, any of the drives, the array or the RAID boxes, or any of the other stuff in between, we'll include some of that stuff down below so that you guys can kind of get a better idea of how to get started into that. Um, yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us, Kyle?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I was kind of all over the place, but I think, just the main thing of like your drives in three or data's in three places or it doesn't exist, and to like not copy things like from one drive to another as a backup, and then also the RAID is not like a backup in its own. So like those are the three big points I wanted to make.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to help explain and kind of go over a lot of this information. I know that it's something that makes a lot of people kind of shut down as soon as they start getting into it, and it can seem very daunting and
Yeah.
overwhelming at first, but um, there's a lot of great resources out there. We just discussed a lot of kind of some basic solutions to get started. Once you kind of feel out and find where your redundancy and your backup solutions are going to be, just do some simple searches out there. There's tons of documentation out there now, and especially with the newer RAID boxes, like the setup is going to be so much more streamlined than it was years before. So, yeah, if you guys have questions, definitely reach out to us. I'm going to include Kyle's information in the description down below as well. If you guys need to reach out to him or myself with any questions, we're more than happy to do everything we can to try to help you out. Well,
Absolutely. And yeah, if you're in the Shoot Your Shot group, please, start a discussion in here. And I'd love to participate, and I love helping out people. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks for joining us. Kyle, thank you again for taking the time tonight. We look forward to having you guys back with us. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will see you guys on the next one. See you guys. Bye, Kyle.